Not that long ago, most folks figured this classic sidearm had finally been put to rest an aging, all-steel design left behind in the wake of polymer-framed pistols that offered lower weight and greater capacity. Some even wrote it off as obsolete, destined to be admired only by collectors or diehards who still drool over vintage military hardware. But something changed. That old warhorse didn't fade away, it came roaring back. And now, it's one of the most talked about handguns in the country. Got a guess? In this video, we're going to take a closer look at how a firearm once presumed dead has pulled off one of the biggest comebacks in recent memory, and why it's winning over a whole new generation of gun owners, enthusiasts, and range regulars. We're talking about the legendary high power, originally designated the P-35, a handgun whose origin story traces back to the 1920s. Back then, the French military was searching for a new service pistol that delivered serious firepower, dependable reliability, and higher magazine capacity than what most sidearms could offer at the time. Enter John Moses Browning, the legendary American gun designer responsible for some of the most iconic firearms in history. Although he passed before completing the design, his work was taken up by Dieudonné Saïve, a gifted Belgian engineer working at Fabrique Nationale. What Saïve finished became the high power we know today, which officially launched in the year 1935. And back then, a double-stack handgun chambered in 9mm Luger that could hold 13 rounds was practically unheard of. This pistol earned its stripes in military service all over the globe. Belgian troops carried it into battle. Canadian forces used it extensively, and British units relied on it for decades. Even the Germans, during their occupation of Belgium in the Second World War, respected the design enough to keep producing and issuing it. Over the years, more than 1.5 million high powers were manufactured across Belgium, Canada, Argentina, and several other nations. It stood strong through the Cold War, regional conflicts, and law enforcement use worldwide. But by the time the 1990s rolled around, a new wave of polymer pistols had taken the spotlight. Shooters were gravitating toward lighter frames and higher capacities, and the high power started to feel like a relic from a different age. Its single-action operation reminded folks of the classic 1911, and while it offered precision and charm, it also came with some quirks, like the magazine disconnect safety and the risk of hammer bite if your grip wasn't dialed in. By the year 2018, both FN Herstal and Browning Arms closed the books on the original high power, ending an 8-decade production run. To most observers, that marked the end of an era. But as any seasoned shooter knows, classic designs never stay buried for long. In the years that followed, interest in the high power didn't fade, it actually grew stronger. Gun owners began combing through the used market, snapping up vintage examples wherever they could find them. And as availability tightened and prices crept higher, it became clear that there was still a serious demand for that old-school steel frame, crisp trigger, and timeless silhouette. That's when a handful of manufacturers around the world stepped up to bring the high power back, this time with modern updates and fresh tooling, all while keeping the soul of the original intact. That's how the comeback story truly began. Turkish manufacturers, most notably Tezas, stepped onto the scene with their own interpretations of the classic high-power blueprint. Soon after, Gerson made waves by releasing the MCP-35, a surprisingly stylish and dependable all-steel pistol that didn't cost an arm and a leg. But things really caught fire when Springfield Armory unveiled their version, the SAE-35, in the year 2021. That model reignited public interest in traditional craftsmanship and showed the world that good old-fashioned steel still had a place in an era dominated by polymer builds. Then, in 2022. FN. Herstal, yes, the original house that Browning helped build rejoined the fray with an updated FN high power, signaling loud and clear that this old platform still had real-world appeal for today's shooters. The high power speaks to shooters who want something tactile, substantial, and rooted in tradition. The single-action trigger, especially when tuned properly, is crisp and rewarding. And that classic cocked and locked carry method is second nature to anyone who's ever spent time behind a 1911. The grip, while designed to house a double-stack magazine, feels more slender than you'd expect and fits most hands like a glove. Recoil? Very manageable thanks in part to the added weight and balance that a steel frame delivers. Sure, today's polymer handguns may match or even exceed it in capacity, but the emotional pull of a design that's seen combat, political upheaval, and decades of use? That's something you don't get from just any plastic-framed pistol. There's mechanical soul here, pick one up, and you're not just holding a firearm. You're holding history made by people who built things to last. Now, whether you believe a pistol conceived in the year 1935 still makes sense in a world filled with polymer-framed carry guns is your call. But let's be honest, despite the popularity of brands like Glock, there's still a large group of shooters who prefer the feel, the weight, and the satisfying break of a single-action trigger. So what about you? Are you team polymer? Or do you still believe in the power of steel and craftsmanship? Drop your take in the comments. And be respectful. It's all about sharing the love of firearms, no matter your platform of choice. For those just getting familiar with this iconic sidearm, let's break down what keeps the high power relevant even today. First off, it uses a classic tilting barrel system, straightforward, proven, and smooth in operation. Takedown is easy, often more intuitive than other older service pistols. The magazine holds 15 rounds in many modern examples, giving you serious capacity for either range sessions or defensive scenarios. One quirk you may run into is the magazine disconnect safety, a feature originally added to meet certain military specs. It keeps the pistol from firing unless a magazine is seated, but it can also lead to a heavier trigger pull. Some newer variants have eliminated it altogether, while others retain it for traditionalists. As for the notorious hammer bite, that's often solved today with redesigned hammer profiles or slight changes to the beaver tail. Either way, purists and tinkerers alike still find joy in running the original format. Look around the current market, and you'll see a wide spectrum from high-end remakes to more wallet-friendly offerings. A standout in the budget category is the Gearson MCP 35. Usually priced around the mid-$500 mark, it features a 15-round magazine, ambidextrous thumb safeties, and a clean set of white stripe and bar sights. All of that is wrapped in a robust steel frame. Accuracy has been well documented, with many shooters reporting tight groupings under 2 inches at 25 yards. The trigger comes in around 7 pounds right out of the box, maybe a bit firm for some, but it usually improves with a few hundred rounds or a little tuning from a gunsmith. For those of us who want the look and feel of a true classic without overspending, the Gearson hits a sweet spot. Then there's the Centurion 14 from Century Arms, introduced more recently and coming in at roughly $400. This Turkish-made version sticks close to the traditional P35 layout. You'll find 3-dot sights, the classic magazine disconnect, and that unmistakable frame profile. One update is the 15-round magazine, which adds a bit more firepower compared to the original 13. Even with its modest price, the Centurion 14 has been earning praise for its reliability, smooth feeding with both ball and hollow point ammunition, and easy field stripping. For new shooters looking to explore the roots of the Browning legacy without shelling out collector-grade money, it's a solid gateway. It brings back the feeling of walking into a local shop and spotting a gently used high power on the shelf, except now it's fresh from the factory with all the reliability of modern machining behind it. On the mid-range production front, Springfield Armory really shook things up with the release of their SAE-35. When it first hit the market, it caused quite a stir. For the first time in decades, an American company had rolled out a factory fresh high-power clone that combined improved materials with meaningful design upgrades. Right out of the box, you got a 15-round magazine, an updated feed ramp for better reliability with modern ammunition, improved sights that were easier to pick up, and perhaps most importantly, no magazine disconnect safety. The trigger was smooth, the construction was solid, and the styling struck that perfect balance between classic military lineage and contemporary readiness. It didn't take long before shooters were lining up to add one to their collections. Springfield proved that a pistol with roots in the 1930s could still thrive in the 21st century. Then F.N. Herstal came back to the table with a completely re-engineered version of the high power. While it still bears a strong resemblance to the original silhouette, F.N.'s version is more of a modern reboot than a faithful reproduction. The company widened the ejection port for improved reliability, added ambidextrous controls like the slide stop, simplified the takedown process, and increased the magazine capacity to 17+1. While it no longer shares many parts with the older models, it stays true to the spirit of a single-action steel sidearm, just with an updated toolset. Some purists might say it strays too far from the Browning blueprint, but plenty of shooters appreciate the ergonomics and modern features that make it a more versatile daily carry or duty gun. At the high end of the spectrum, custom builders have taken the high power to an entirely new level. Legendary names like Novak and Nighthawk Custom have built reputations around turning these pistols into hand-fitted works of art. We're talking match-grade barrels, refined and consistent triggers, precision-machined components, and coatings designed to hold up in all climates. You'll see custom front strap checkering, slim profile grips, and upgraded sights that make these pistols not just beautiful, but serious performers. Some see this as a break from the original military simplicity, but others recognize it as evolution keeping the soul of the high power alive while giving it capabilities worthy of today's most demanding shooters. Whether it's for personal defense, competition, or collecting, a custom-tuned high power can be as functional as it is stunning. One reason this platform continues to hold such sway among American gun owners is the deep-rooted connection to history. While polymer-framed pistols dominate the current market for concealed carry and law enforcement, there's a growing number of shooters who want to carry a pistol with steel in its bones and heritage in its DNA. There's a kind of reverence for handguns that have seen wartime service and were carried by soldiers, police, and citizens alike in turbulent times. Owning one isn't just about function, it's about preserving a piece of the Second Amendment's living legacy. All of this begs the question, why has the high power come roaring back in popularity? And does it still make sense in a world filled with micro-sized, double-stack 9mm handguns molded from polymer? For many of us, the answer is yes, without hesitation. There's something a striker-fired pistol just can't replicate. The crisp feel of a tuned single-action trigger, the all-metal balance in the hand, and the deep sense of history behind each round sent downrange. You can see it in the way people respond at the range, the curiosity, the admiration, and the instant recognition that they're holding something more than just another tool. Looking ahead, there's every reason to believe we'll see more innovation in this space. Maybe manufacturers will experiment with adding accessory rails, optic-ready slides, or shorter slide and barrel combinations for concealed carry rolls. A 22 caliber training variant could make range sessions more affordable, especially for new shooters. We have already seen capacity jump from the original 13 to 15, and now 17 rounds, so pushing that boundary further is likely just a matter of time. As more companies jump in, the possibilities for modernization only grow. If you're the kind of shooter who appreciates history, craftsmanship, and mechanical precision, you owe it to yourself to give the high power a shot literally. Whether you are an old school fan who remembers seeing them on store shelves back in the day, or you're just now realizing that the term high power has nothing to do with a high-point pistol, the appeal is undeniable. The Gersan MCP-35 and the Centurion 14 offer budget-friendly ways to get into the game, but even the mid-tier and custom offerings bring their own flavor to the table. Whichever route you take, you'll likely enjoy that classic balance, the clean break of the single-action trigger, and the subtle but powerful sense of tradition in your hands. Personally, I'll always keep a place in my collection for a tried-and-true steel-framed pistol, a sidearm that's been through world wars, stood the test of time, and still holds its own against modern competition. But what about you? Where do you stand on steel versus polymer, or classic versus modern? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap that bell icon so you don't miss future content celebrating firearm freedom, heritage, and everything in between. Thanks for watching.